What if I told you that a strange structure saved a man's life during the harshest winter? In remote areas of the Rocky Mountains, survival has always depended on the ability to reliably retain precious heat inside a simple wooden dwelling. One mountain settler once spent several weeks building a massive structure out of huge cobblestones right in the middle of his only room. That year, winter was particularly harsh and absolutely merciless to the unprepared pioneers of the American frontier. Ordinary metal stoves cooled down very quickly in the middle of the night, forcing people to wake up from the piercing, icy cold in their beds. Dry firewood burned out in just a few hours, and the temperature in standard wooden huts dropped rapidly in the early morning. However, something completely inexplicable to all the other inhabitants of this remote mountain settlement was happening in the house of our resourceful hero. His dwelling remained surprisingly warm and incredibly comfortable until dawn, without any additional fresh logs being thrown into the hot furnace. This very simple law of physics turned ordinary river boulders into a real heating battery with long-lasting and continuous action. Gradually, the neighbors' ridicule gave way to enormous, sincere surprise, and then to a persistent desire to repeat this life-saving architectural trick themselves. Watch this video to the end, and you'll find out how one mountaineer's useless stone bench kept his hut warm all night long. What was found in the old archives completely changes the usual idea of the harsh life of the first Western settlers. When building his small shelter far from civilization, this man approached the process in an extremely unconventional and well-thought-out way. He paid special attention not only to the sufficient thickness of the log walls, but also to the competent internal arrangement of the space around the hot hearth. Instead of the usual smooth wooden flooring, he decided to lay part of the floor and the elevation next to the iron stove with large natural cobblestones. To realize his bold idea, he had to make dozens of incredibly exhausting trips to the nearest rushing mountain stream. Transporting these heavy boulders required incredible physical effort and took up a huge amount of precious daylight hours. Each individual stone was carefully selected by the attentive builder for the right size, convenient shape, and high density of the internal structure. Preference was given exclusively to smooth river rocks, which had been washed by rushing icy water and polished by sand for decades. Over time, these unique natural elements acquired maximum density and an almost perfect rounded shape for creating reliable masonry. The stubborn mountaineer carried them on his tired shoulders, carefully stacking them into a huge, massive pile right in front of the entrance to the new hut. The outer shape of the bench gradually took on very clear geometric contours, neatly curving around the black cast iron stove on 3 different sides. The structure fit as tightly as possible to the hot metal walls, leaving only a tiny gap for proper circulation of heated air. This well-thought-out geometry allowed for the most efficient capture of all the powerful heat radiation from the red-hot iron body of the stove. The total contact area of the materials was calculated in such a way that constant heating occurred absolutely evenly throughout the entire volume of the stone. It was a truly complex engineering calculation, performed intuitively by a simple but very experienced mountain dweller. The inner hidden part of the bench was tightly filled with much smaller stones and a very thick, viscous clay mortar. This central core created the necessary enormous mass capable of accumulating and reliably retaining a colossal amount of vital thermal energy. The outer visible rows consisted of the smoothest, largest, and most beautiful boulders, forming a very aesthetic and pleasing facade. The wet clay was very carefully smoothed with the master's wet hands, creating a flat, smooth, and surprisingly pleasant to the touch surface. The skilled builder sincerely cared not only about high functionality, but also about the neat appearance of his stone creation. The upper wide surface of the bench always required the most careful attention and special geometric precision during the final laying. To create a perfectly flat, usable surface, large flat slate slabs were used, found high on the steep slope of a neighboring mountain. This daily painstaking work seemed to many neighbors to be a completely pointless waste of precious time in such a short summer season. Most people preferred to spend their energy on obtaining food or preparing ordinary firewood, rather than dragging heavy stones around. However, the inexorable passage of time put everything in its rightful place, clearly proving that this far-sighted and intelligent man was absolutely right. We would be very interested to hear your opinion on such incredibly labor-intensive and complex construction projects. Write a detailed response in the comments below the video and be sure to subscribe to our History channel. What if I told you that everything you firmly believed about the rules of classic wooden construction is untrue? In those distant times, there were very strict and clear unspoken rules for building reliable wooden dwellings throughout the American frontier. Absolutely any deviation from these proven traditional methods was always viewed with extreme suspicion and strong distrust by conservative neighbors. When the few local residents first saw the massive construction underway inside a small hut, they were extremely puzzled. The very idea of voluntarily hauling icy river stones into a warm wooden house seemed to them the height of absurdity and impracticality. The first neighbor to visit looked at the mountains of rough cobblestones and dirty clay on the clean floor for a long time with great surprise. He sincerely did not understand why it was necessary to turn a cozy human dwelling into something resembling a cold mountain cave or a dark mine. Rumors about the strange behavior of the new settler quickly spread throughout the small and isolated mountain camp. People often came out of sheer curiosity to see this incomprehensible pile of stones, which was growing every day. Each new visitor considered it their duty to express their valuable expert opinion on the complete futility of such hard work. The main argument of all critics was the irretrievable loss of a huge part of such important and scarce interior space in a residential building. Standard pioneer huts were not large to begin with, providing only the most basic shelter from the elements. The final completion of all the hard construction work coincided with the last warm days of the short mountain autumn. The owner carefully washed all the dried clay residue off the wooden floor and neatly arranged his modest belongings around the new bench. The huge structure now stood proudly in the corner, resembling a sleeping stone beast patiently awaiting its moment of glory. The neighbors gradually stopped actively discussing the topic, considering the new resident's strangeness to be simply a harmless personal quirk. The entire settlement began to actively prepare for the coming cold weather, hastily insulating wooden windows and caulking cracks with fresh moss. Every day, people chopped down huge numbers of thick trees, stacking tall piles of firewood around their log houses to protect them from the wind. Preparing firewood was considered the most important and incredibly exhausting task, on the success of which the survival of the entire family depended. The iron stoves that stood in every house were incredibly voracious and required a constant supply of dry, high-quality wood. Stopping such a voracious metal heart of the house, even for a couple of hours, would threaten the rapid and inevitable freezing of the entire room. That is why huge stocks of chopped firewood were the main indicator of any mountain settler's readiness for a long winter. Our hero also stocked up on a sufficient supply of good dry firewood, but his wood pile was noticeably smaller than that of his other thrifty neighbors. This again caused a slight wave of condescending smiles among the experienced locals, who considered themselves experts in mountain survival. Nature froze in tense anticipation of the first powerful snowstorm, which was to finally cut off the camp from the outside world. The first light frosts had already covered all the small puddles and streams in the vicinity of the camp with a thin, crunchy crust of ice. The wooden walls of the huts began to creak quietly at night due to the sharp drop in the temperature of the surrounding mountain air. All the inhabitants locked themselves in their homes, throwing more wood into the perpetually hungry furnaces of their red-hot iron stoves. Are you ready to find out how this cold and strange structure behaved during the first serious night frosts? What I am about to show you is forbidden to discuss among manufacturers of modern electric heating devices because of the simplicity of this method. A truly harsh winter descended on the mountain valley incredibly suddenly, and with frightening, devastating, destructive force, a piercing, icy wind began to howl fiercely in the narrow canyons, mercilessly tearing the last dry leaves from the frozen trees. The ambient temperature dropped by several dozen degrees in just one short and alarming day. Thick white snow rapidly covered the entire ground with a thick carpet, completely isolating the small huts from each other. The standard log walls of neighboring houses offered only the most basic, minimal protection from this icy hurricane. Despite careful autumn caulking, the biting frosty air still found the smallest cracks and penetrated inside the rooms. Neighbors had to constantly wear thick winter clothes even inside their own seemingly protected homes. Thin iron stoves glowed red hot, trying to cope with the relentless onslaught of Arctic cold penetrating from outside. People were forced to throw dry logs on the fire almost non-stop to maintain a livable temperature in their rooms. By late evening, the grand bench had warmed up completely, turning into a huge, pleasant-to-the-touch source of gentle heat. The slate slabs at the very top became so warm that it was comfortable to sit on them without thick clothing. This huge chunk of river rock absorbed a tremendous amount of energy from the burning birch logs. The air in the small hut warmed up very evenly, without sharp temperature differences near the floor and under the ceiling. It was a completely different, deep, and enveloping warmth, radically different from the sharp heat of red-hot metal. Outside the walls of the hut, a merciless snowstorm continued to rage, throwing handfuls of stinging snow at the small, cloudy windows. The wind howled in the chimney, trying to blow out the last remnants of heat from this small island of human resistance to nature. But inside, there was an amazing silence, broken only by the cozy crackling of the last embers burning in the cast-iron stove. The massive stone structure reliably stabilized the climate inside the room, creating an impenetrable barrier to the approaching mountain frost. The first truly harsh winter night was approaching, which would put everything in its rightful place. The usual settlers were preparing for a difficult night watch, stacking firewood as close to their beds as possible. They knew they would have to wake up at least 3 times during the night to keep the life-saving fire from going out completely. The slightest mistake or too deep a sleep could result in the water in the bucket being covered with thick ice by morning. Their lives depended on constant monitoring of the capricious metal box, which did not forgive any mistakes. The fear of waking up in a cold, icy hut made them sleep very lightly, constantly listening to the sound of burning wood. Our builder, on the contrary, calmly finished all his evening chores and did not add a new batch of firewood. He simply closed the metal door of the firebox tightly, allowing the last crimson coals to slowly smolder in the gray ashes. The man spread his sleeping bag right on the wide, warm slate surface of his grandiose structure. The stone pleasantly warmed his tired back, giving off the pleasant and soft solar heat accumulated over a long day. If you are interested in the topic of competent survival in the extreme harsh conditions of the Wild West, be sure to like this video. Are you ready to learn the shocking truth about how ordinary physics saved lives in the 19th century? The main principle of thermal mass is based on the high density of the material and its ability to absorb a huge amount of energy. The higher the density of the chosen substance, the more heat it can absorb without destroying its structure. Wood, for example, has a very low density and contains a lot of air, making it an excellent insulator but a poor heat accumulator. Metal heats up quickly, but also rapidly releases its heat into the environment, cooling down in a matter of minutes. River cobblestones and hard mountain slate are practically ideal natural heat energy accumulators. Their incredibly dense internal structure has almost no voids, which allows molecules to maintain a high temperature for a long time. When invisible infrared radiation from a hot stove hits a smooth stone, it slowly penetrates deep into the rock. This process is vaguely reminiscent of how a dry sponge gradually absorbs water spilled on a table. The stone saturates with heat very smoothly, warming up layer by layer to its deepest clay base. The amount of heat accumulated directly depended on the total mass of the entire stone structure erected inside the room. The weight of this bench exceeded a ton, which provided a colossal volume for reliable storage of thermal energy for a long time. To heat such a huge mass, it was necessary to burn a lot of firewood throughout the short winter day. However, once fully saturated, the stone mountain became a completely independent and powerful source of stable heating. It could give off its carefully stored heat for many long hours without any additional fuel. The rate of heat transfer from dense natural stone is as slow as the rate of its initial prolonged heating. This means that a stone block never causes sudden and unpleasant temperature fluctuations in a small enclosed space. It acts as a huge stabilizer, gently evening out the climate and maintaining it at a comfortable level. The surrounding air is heated evenly by the warm stone, creating a very pleasant and natural atmosphere for humans. In such a room, it is never stuffy from excessive heat or damp from a suddenly extinguished flame. This ingenious system works solely thanks to a correct understanding of the laws of nature and the properties of available materials. The settler did not invent complex mechanical devices and did not use any rare or expensive technological components. He simply made ordinary heavy stones lying around work to his advantage in the harshest conditions. It was a triumph of practical thinking over blind adherence to inconvenient but established local architectural traditions. In the next chapter, you will learn exactly how this life-saving accumulated heat was distributed in the middle of the night. Late at night in the huts of the mountain frontier, the quietest and at the same time most tense time of the day began. The fire in our hero's metal stove inevitably died down, leaving behind only a handful of faintly glowing coals. The cast iron walls of the firebox cooled rapidly, losing their scorching temperature in a matter of tens of minutes. In any other neighboring hut, this event would have been a signal for immediate awakening and urgent stoking of a new batch of firewood. However, here only serene silence reigned, broken only by the even breathing of a man sleeping peacefully on the stones. As soon as the air in the small room began to cool slightly, the massive stone bench smoothly came into play. The temperature difference between the warm stone and the cooling air caused the energy to slowly leave its stone shelters. Invisible heat waves began to gently radiate from the wide slate surface in all directions of the dark room. This process took place completely naturally and without the slightest fluctuation, providing an incredibly stable climatic background. The huge mass of river cobblestones acted as a reliable anchor, preventing the temperature in the room from falling below a comfortable level. Behind the thick wooden walls, the frost grew stronger with each passing hour, trying to freeze everything alive in the gorge. Small cracks in the windows were covered with a thick layer of white frost due to the huge difference in temperature between the outside and inside. In ordinary huts, this frost often began to melt only in the morning when the owners heated their stoves to the limit. But in this amazing house, the windows remained dry, as the stable, even heat prevented moisture from condensing and freezing. The air remained dry and very pleasant to breathe, free of the smell of smoke and burnt metal dust. The massive stone base, resting on sturdy joists, also prevented the cold from penetrating from below through the plank floor. The bench warmed not only the air above it, but also the wooden boards around its wide clay base. This created a kind of thermal cushion that protected the most vulnerable parts of the building from freezing in the bitter cold. The energy was distributed in all possible directions, effectively reflecting any attacks from the nighttime mountain frost. The hut turned into an impregnable thermal fortress, where the only weapons of defense were ordinary river stones. The morning greeted our hero with a comfortable coolness, but not with a deadly, bone-chilling frost. The temperature in the room had dropped gradually over the night by a few degrees, remaining quite acceptable for a peaceful morning awakening. He did not need to feverishly chatter his teeth and try to light unruly damp wood with numb fingers. He could calmly get up, stretch, and slowly start the usual process of lighting his metal cast iron stove. The stones of the bench, although cooled overnight, still retained the remnants of yesterday's heat deep within their clay depths. With a new batch of hot fire, this amazing physical cycle started all over again, repeating its rhythm day after day. The stone began to greedily absorb the radiated heat again, preparing for another night of confrontation with the icy wind. This system was completely reliable and required no complex maintenance or costly repairs. It worked according to the eternal laws of nature, proving that man can find harmony even in the harshest climate. The massive river stones became the settler's faithful allies in his daily invisible war with the cruel elements. Guess what happened next when the mountain winter showed everyone its most cruel and true icy character? In the neighboring huts, the early frosty morning began with panic, chattering teeth, and incessant cursing of the harsh weather. People woke up under thick layers of woolen blankets, struggling to force themselves out into the freezing cold room. The water in the buckets often froze to the bottom, and the bread on the table turned into a hard and inedible stone. They had to feverishly melt their icy stoves, spending precious morning hours trying to warm their numb hands. One of the neighbors, unable to bear this daily morning torment, decided to check on the strange newcomer. He wrapped himself tightly in a thick sheepskin coat and struggled through the deep snowdrifts to his plot. The neighbor was absolutely sure that he would find the mountaineer frozen through or completely desperate in his foolish endeavor. Approaching the door, he saw no thick black smoke coming from the chimney, which only reinforced his gloomiest predictions. He hastily pulled the wooden door handle expecting to see a room inside that resembled an icy, hellish crypt. The news of the surprisingly warm hut spread through the snow-covered camp with incredible speed, despite the raging storm. That same day, several more frozen neighbors came to see for themselves if these fantastic and unbelievable stories were true. They entered the house, touched the hot stones, and silently shook their heads, realizing their own past foolishness and blindness. No one laughed at their wasted efforts anymore, or called the bench a huge, useless tombstone. Their frozen eyes now showed only deep respect and a desperate desire to warm themselves in this cozy place. The former mockery quickly gave way to sincere apologies and genuine interest in the technical side of the matter. The most experienced hunters and lumberjacks asked questions about the thickness of the masonry, the type of clay used, and the size of the stones. They carefully studied how the bench fit against the cast-iron firebox, trying to remember every important engineering detail. The owner willingly shared his knowledge, not holding a grudge against people who simply did not have his unique experience. He understood that on the frontier, mutual assistance and the exchange of useful knowledge often become the main guarantee of survival for everyone. People sat for hours on the warm stone surface, enjoying the forgotten feeling of complete comfort and safety. They talked about their nighttime torments and envied the peaceful sleep of the man who had tamed the heat. This huge, clumsy structure suddenly became the most desirable and technologically advanced object in the entire mountain settlement. The huge stone block went from being the subject of everyone's sarcastic jokes to a symbol of reliability and life-saving engineering. Winter was just beginning, but the fear of its icy breath was greatly reduced thanks to this vivid example. In the next chapter, you will learn about the rules for choosing the right rocks for building such thermal structures. Choosing the right material played an absolutely critical role in the successful functioning of this entire massive thermal system. Not every stone found in the mountains was suitable for creating an effective and durable thermal energy storage device. Porous rocks, such as light pumice or loose sandstone, were immediately and ruthlessly rejected by the experienced builder. They contained too much internal air, which made them excellent heat insulators, but absolutely useless heat accumulators. Such stone heated up very quickly from the furnace, but cooled down just as quickly, failing to provide the necessary nighttime energy reserve. The builder purposefully sought out rocks with the highest possible density and a complete absence of visible cracks or internal voids. It was no coincidence that he chose heavy river cobblestones and massive blocks of solid, dark gray mountain granite. These materials were formed over millions of years under enormous pressure, which gave them ideal thermodynamic characteristics for this task. Their specific gravity allowed them to absorb and reliably retain huge amounts of infrared radiation for many long hours. The smooth surface of the river stones also greatly facilitated the process of dense masonry and minimized the number of necessary binding joints. It was also very important to carefully inspect each stone beforehand for hidden microcracks or weaknesses in the rock. A stone with an internal defect could easily split from the constant cycles of intense heating and subsequent nighttime cooling. A split boulder would inevitably lead to a breach in the monolithicity of the entire structure and the appearance of dangerous voids inside the thermal base. Therefore, the master checked each cobblestone with a strong blow from a heavy metal hammer, listening for the purity and ringing sound. A dull sound immediately revealed a defective specimen, which was immediately discarded from the main pile of good materials. The binding mortar also required a special, very careful approach to its proportions and the selection of natural components. Ordinary clay, when heated and dried, had the unpleasant property of shrinking significantly and becoming covered with deep, wide cracks. To avoid this destructive effect, a precisely measured amount of fine, sifted river sand was added to the mortar. The sand acted as a microscopic structural framework, preventing the clay from deforming under constant sharp temperature fluctuations around the iron stove. Once hardened, this mixture was almost as strong as natural stone, creating a single thermal monolith without flaws. The foundation for such a heavy structure required the use of the strongest and most rot-resistant varieties of local wood. The support logs were hewn from thick mountain larch trunks, known for their incredible strength and resistance to moisture. This ensured that the enormous weight of the bench would not break through the floor and cause dangerous warping of the entire wooden hut over time. The reliable base ensured the immobility of the stone mass, which prevented cracks from appearing in the dried clay joints due to vibrations. Every detail of this design was thought out to the smallest detail, forming a unified, reliable, and incredibly durable heating system. The flat slate slabs used for the upper bench were selected with particular care for their perfect smoothness and evenness. They had to ensure a comfortable stay for a person on the bench without scratching clothes or creating uncomfortable hard protrusions. Slate has a layered structure that allows it to distribute heat very quickly and evenly across its entire flat surface. The bench warmed up faster than the rest of the stone massif, providing a cozy place to rest just a couple of hours after the stove was lit. These slabs became the finishing, perfect touch in the picture of this ingenious architectural and thermal engineering solution. Careful selection, proper preparation, and a skillful combination of materials transformed rough physical labor into a true art of survival on the frontier. This bench stood as a monumental testament to the triumph of reason over the harsh circumstances of the wild and cold American West. The huge stone bench very quickly became the most important and functional element of this mountain settler's modest life. It became not only a reliable source of vital nighttime heat, but also a central part of his entire daily routine. During the day when the stove was actively working and the stones were heating up, this wide surface served as an excellent, spacious, and comfortable work table. On the perfectly flat slate slabs, the owner repaired torn leather harnesses, sharpened knives, and did minor repairs to his equipment. The pleasant warmth emanating from the stone kept his hands from freezing while performing delicate and painstaking work on frosty days. Drying wet winter clothes and shoes on a warm surface became one of the most important advantages of this amazing structure. Thick woolen socks and pants, wet after a long trek through deep snow, dried on the stones in just a couple of hours. Gentle, even heat did not damage expensive leather boots, preventing the rough natural material from drying out, cracking, and deforming. By morning, the shoes were always not only completely dry, but also very warm inside, which made going out into the cold less painful. This significantly reduced the risk of catching a cold or frostbite during long winter hunting trips to the mountains. The massive structure effectively divided the small room into several distinct and very comfortable functional living areas. The area next to the hot stove and warm bench became the main center of attraction, where all the main household activities took place. The rest of the hut, where it was slightly cooler, was used for storing firewood, tools, and closed barrels with provisions. This clever zoning helped to organize the limited space as efficiently as possible, avoiding chaos and unnecessary cluttering of the passageways. The bench set a strict order for the entire interior of the house, proving its absolute practicality in every detail of everyday life. Cooking also often took place with the direct or indirect participation of this multifunctional huge heating battery. Heavy cast iron pots with ready-made soup could simply be moved from the hot stove to the warm edge of the stonework. The food remained comfortably hot for several hours without burning to the bottom and without requiring constant monitoring of the boiling process. The owner also successfully used the gentle heat of the slate surface to rise dough when baking fresh homemade bread. The dough was perfect in such stable temperature conditions, delighting the owner of the hut with lush, fragrant, and satisfying loaves. Cleaning this massive stone furniture was absolutely no trouble and took only a few short minutes. The smooth slate slabs simply needed to be wiped with a damp cloth to remove any accidentally spilled debris or wood ash from the oven. Unlike rough wood, spilled grease or unpleasant lingering odors from cooking did not penetrate the stone. Over time, the clay joints became so hard that they could not be damaged by a regular brush when sweeping the surface regularly. The structure retained its original neat appearance, requiring only minimal care from its meticulous creator. The bench replaced a table, bed, drying rack, workbench, and comfortable sofa for guests, justifying every stone invested in it. The space that critics considered irretrievably lost turned out to be used with maximum 100% efficiency and benefit. This massive piece of rock became the true heart of the house, without which life in the mountains would have turned into an endless struggle against the cold. News of the incredible efficiency of the stone bench quickly changed all the established building habits in this small camp. Having experienced the benefits of stable heat for themselves, many neighbors firmly decided to modernize their own freezing wooden huts. As soon as the heavy snowstorms subsided a little, a massive and very active movement to harvest building stone began in the settlement. People organized joint trips to the frozen riverbed to extract suitable heavy river boulders with pickaxes and crowbars. This hard work, which until recently had been the subject of so much ridicule, now became a common priority for the entire community. The pioneer's experience proved to be incredibly valuable, and he became the main unofficial consultant on the construction of such heat accumulators. People constantly came to him for advice on how to properly reinforce the floor, where to find the best sticky clay, and how to mix a durable mortar. The man willingly shared all his secrets, understanding that the comfort and health of his neighbors during the harsh winter depended on it. He personally visited homes, helping to correctly assess the reliability of the logs and pointing out possible mistakes in the planning of heavy masonry. His house became a visual teaching aid where people came to study the details of joining stone and cast iron metal for the stove. The most noticeable and joyful result of this mass architectural enthusiasm was a sharp decrease in the overall consumption of firewood in the settlement. People no longer needed to keep their stoves burning at maximum capacity around the clock to avoid freezing to death in their beds. The heat accumulated by the stones during the day meant that fuel had to be added much less frequently late at night and during the coldest hours of the night. The wood piles, which used to melt away before their eyes, were now consumed much more slowly and economically, preserving precious reserves for the spring. This huge achievement radically reduced the level of constant domestic anxiety among all the inhabitants of this isolated mountain camp. The reduction in the need for firewood also freed up a huge amount of time and physical energy for the strong men of the settlement. Instead of swinging a heavy axe for hours every day in the cold, they could engage in more useful and productive activities. They now had time to repair equipment, go on additional hunting trips, or simply enjoy a well-deserved rest in the warmth of their families. Life in the camp became less exhausting and more measured, despite the fierce winter snowstorms raging outside the walls. This simple technology indirectly improved the quality of life for the entire community, giving people the most important things: time and preserved strength. The appearance of the interior decoration of most mountain huts in this valley has also undergone significant and stylish changes. Gray and dark river stone has become an integral and familiar part of the interior, blending organically with roughly hewn thick logs. The huts began to look more solid, reliable, and cozy, losing their former appearance of flimsy and drafty temporary shelters. People began to decorate their stone buildings, selecting the most beautiful slate slabs and carefully filling in the thick clay joints. The thermal mass became not only a functional necessity, but also a source of pride for every homeowner. The huge stone bench with which this quiet domestic revolution began continued to serve its creator reliably day after day. It stood as a silent monument to the triumph of common sense and observation over blind habits and unfounded human ridicule. The pioneer who once endured the hurtful jokes of his neighbors now enjoyed well-deserved and unquestionable authority among all the inhabitants of the frontier. His simple idea forever changed the approach to construction in these harsh lands, leaving a warm mark on the history of the West's development. It was a classic example of how one correct and timely idea can warm hundreds of freezing people. The concept of the effective use of thermal mass fundamentally changed the approach to architecture and survival in the harsh conditions of the American West. It clearly demonstrated that the successful conquest of the wilderness depends not only on brute physical strength or the number of trees felled. True success always lies in a deep understanding of the surrounding world and the ability to competently use its basic physical laws to one's advantage. Heavy stones, which had simply lain at the bottom of mountain rivers for millions of years, suddenly became a powerful tool in the hands of a resourceful person. This simple and reliable engineering discovery allowed people to significantly expand the boundaries of their comfortable and safe living on the frontier. Overcoming the extreme climate of the Rocky Mountains became possible precisely because of such small but incredibly important everyday technical innovations. Settlers had to constantly adapt to the harshest conditions, where the slightest carelessness or mistake could cost the lives of an entire family wintering there. The stone bench became the most striking example of such successful adaptation, turning the disadvantages of wooden houses into a reliable and stable autonomous heating system. It showed that even in the most hostile and cold environment, it is possible to create an island of comfort and warmth without huge resource costs. This experience is invaluable for understanding how the resilient and independent character of the first American pioneers and mountain trappers was formed. The value of simple human observation and applied engineering far from civilization often exceeded the value of gold or modern firearms. The ability to notice how long a stone heated by the sun retains its heat at dusk became the key to solving the global problem of survival. This process of transferring natural phenomena into human dwellings required not academic knowledge, but a lively, inquisitive, and very practical mind. The mountain dwellers learned from nature itself, adopting its mechanisms for maintaining balance and protecting against the destructive Arctic cold, which had been proven over thousands of years. Their ingenuity compensated for the lack of sophisticated factory technologies and expensive insulating building materials in these wild, undeveloped lands. The use of basic natural laws provided enormous advantages over those who relied solely on brute force and constant, exhausting labor. Modern people are too often accustomed to relying entirely on active heating systems, forgetting the potential of passive conservation of precious thermal energy. The frontier experience reminds us that competent planning and the use of the right materials can produce remarkable results without the use of sophisticated modern technology. Thermal mass required no fuel, did not break down, did not need repair, and operated completely silently for decades. It was an ideal autonomous system created from free materials that were literally lying at the feet of every hardworking mountain settler. The independence that such passive heating systems provided was absolutely unprecedented for the inhabitants of isolated winter camps in the mountains. Reducing their enormous dependence on a constant supply of dry firewood made the settlers more secure in the face of prolonged snowstorms lasting several days. They could stay in their huts for weeks during bad weather, knowing that their thermal reservoir would reliably protect them from freezing. This stability gave them incredible peace of mind and confidence in the future, reducing the constant psychological stress of the struggle for survival. Stone became a symbol of this new, safer, and more measured life on the border between the known and the completely wild and harsh world. The ingenuity of the early pioneers proves that human intelligence is capable of finding a way out of the most hopeless and extreme climatic situations. The integration of human dwellings with natural rock formations blurred the harsh line between artificial structures and the surrounding wild environment. The hut became a kind of extension of the mountain landscape, adopting its best protective properties to ensure life within its wooden walls. This symbiosis between man and nature was absolutely necessary in order to gain a foothold in these harsh and unfriendly rocky lands. Without such ingenuity, the conquest of the Great Plains and mountains of the West would have cost much more blood and numerous tragic failures. The history of the conquest of the Wild West is full of similar, unique examples of amazing human ingenuity in the struggle against unpredictable and harsh wilderness. The simplest solutions, based on careful observation of the surrounding world, often proved to be the most reliable tools for survival in harsh conditions. Thermal mass became the invisible shield that protected the pioneers from the piercing, icy mountain winds on cold winter nights. Write in the comments what other topics about life, tricks, and survival on the frontier you would like to see in our future videos. Be sure to subscribe to our channel so you never miss new exciting historical investigations about the exploration of the Great American West.